I've bullied my boyfriend. One time, I hit his head with a porcelain bowl, and I got shocked when blood streamed down his face. And I told him not to go to the clinic in case I got into trouble.
What in the world?
Yeah, the thing is that the thing is gender equality is mostly perceived as protection of women from the danger of men, but I believe it is also necessary that the opposite should be acknowledged as well. Hello guys, welcome back to Person Perspective Podcast. I'm Morest.
I'm Austin.
I'm May. Today's topic that we are gonna talk about is what we think of stereotype, mostly negative ones. But by definition, a stereotype is a set idea that people have towards someone or something, or an idea that's mostly wrong and disapproving. Although they are disgusting, they are still widely rooted in the mindset of our society. It's really hard to drop a stereotype out of our mind completely, as it's most likely to have come to your head through herd mentality.
Exactly. It's contagious like a virus. Once it's settled in our brain, it's very hard to eradicate.
Yeah, but it's high time people discarded cliched and biased stereotypes that can harm mental sanity to an enormous extent.
The weather ain't for everyone.
I think all of the stereotypes start from schools because it's where all the magic happens. We dress ourselves with knowledge, we compromise our lives with knowledge, we apply the knowledge and forge our reality. To be exact, the sense of our own reality. So if we are taught to behave like a gentleman, we will act like a gentleman with no doubt. If we showered with the things that seem good on the outside, we will be thinking like everything fits in very well without having ourselves slip through. So if we think of ourselves being in that mold perfectly, we will feel exuberant. But once we go against the mold that society believes what a good person is, we dread the society finding out who we really are.
Yeah, of course, we lose our identity trying to meet up the expectations of people around us. That's quite common here, I think.
One of the stereotypes that amazes me is that there are people who are worried about what will happen if a student who is always ranked first in the state school drops down. But a student who always gets a low score is more likely to have people believe his or her efforts in a dishonest way than to be appreciated even if he or she tries hard and gets a good grade. Here, I want to ask a question that is the right? Should such a stereotype really exist?
No.
Should this always be the case?
No.
Actually, I do the same with you. I think the only answer to all these questions is definitely no.
Yes.
A student who has a high score is always worried about what if I can't make it in the next exam because of unexpected problems. And a student who doesn't do very well also has to be recognized when he studies hard and gets a good grade. I will always say that he or she also should be appreciated by all the people, including teachers and parents, right? As you always take care of a good student, so you should also take care of a bad student. If so, he or she will get a good education or great marks, right?
Totally.
For that, we must try to break out of this stereotype.
Yes, it needs to be fair.
Yes, equity is a must.
I had a similar experience when I was in high school.
Really? What's that?
I don't remember in detail, but at that time, a student who was failing in most of the exams in class got almost full marks in the midterm exam. He told us before the exam that he would try very hard to get a lot of marks because it was midterm exam, and if he had great marks in it, his parents would take him to the trip. So he put a lot of effort into it. But you know what had happened there? Like, while the teacher was calling us for answer papers, and she looked at the answer sheet for a long time without giving him the answer sheet immediately. We all noticed that there was a lot of suspicion in our teacher's case. She also checked his answer paper again and again and finally gave it to him. We all heard the teacher asking him, was it honest? And if you had ever cheated on the exam or not. Yeah, we were really amazed, and so did I. Anyway, we all tried very hard to encourage our friend that day was really fucked.
Yeah, I can totally imagine that. Like in our culture, school grades are considered more favorable than health. What we got in high school will have effects throughout our lives. They are considered as turning points in life. It's true that like when we get high marks, we can go to bigger and better university. But I don't think it should be organized by race or money. Even though these grades are turning points, rich people can buy the grades and can enter into university more easily than we thought. What's even crazier is that students get judged based on the university they go to and mistreated according to their grades in high school. They have difficult times dealing with the society who strongly believes in stereotypes.
I think it's even more favorable than education.
Yeah, definitely. So, have you ever been in such a situation?
Yeah, I used to have that experience, yes. It was when I was in high school senior year. My parents forced me to go to a bigger university, not to get judged by their own relatives. That's the point where I got to know they care about the university, money, and higher standards, but sadly, not the person. So it becomes more clear when we have a feast during a family event and they give the person who went to the university they told him to go to a nice place when other people were treated like they didn't want them to be there, and sometimes like they didn't even exist. So I was very frustrated at that implications that the stereotypes have on people.
It's just a frustrating, inevitable situation, and the frustration makes cultural stereotypes come in our mind and be seen as relevant to them personally. Actually, once we get frustrated, it is considered to be confirmation to the stereotypes which are marked by the society who we are in their mind.
So you mean if you see someone else who doesn't bother getting judged based on something they have done, no matter good or bad, he or she is highly likely to ignore the stereotypes and do whatever they want to do instead?
Of course, why we be in a emotional survival state just by the stereotypes? Like sometimes we need to move on and do what we have to do, but it doesn't stop there. Actually, the stereotypes take the edge off the abilities of the person. They have dramatic effects on social and psychological influence. When a person is judged or even worse, discriminated against by the stereotypes, he tends to huddle together with people who he thinks are equally mistreated like him. It seems like they're a separated group.
I can imagine that.
There is an experiment that I've read about this segregation. So have you guys ever heard of Mr. Martin Luther King?
Yes, of course, I have heard him.
A day after Martin Luther King had been assassinated, a third grade teacher in Iowa State, whose name is Jane Elliott, was looking for a way to show her class the experience of being discriminated against. So she divided the class into two groups, one for blue-eyed student and the other one is brown-eyed student. So she discriminated against the brown-eyed students. She gave the privilege of being blue-eyed students by giving them the front row of the class, good education in the playground, and also students were being told not to make friends with brown-eyed students as they were depicted as like less intelligent and less behaved. So the result was that the children felt something really hard. They felt afraid to play in the playground and huddle together besides the playground. As a result, the implication are lower grades in their exams, becoming lesser socially active than they were before. So we can see that the stereotypes have such impacts that can change a person's behavior enormously.
Oh, I feel it too. Life feels like
Basic life skills such as preparing food, washing dishes, laundry, and other house chores are often and fairly considered as work for women. According to that cliched and ridiculous stereotype, women are the ones responsible for those chores, while men go out to find money and to support their family. I think for the same reason, if a man does the dishes or cooks a meal, he is labeled as a weak man who can try to earn a good living. And on the other hand, a woman who is competent at bringing up children isn't praised as society perceives it as a norm, whilst they tend to put a man on the pedestal if he's capable of raising his children very well.
I agree with that. The men are publicly so much more acclaimed for having the capacity to raise their own child while working than women who are trying to manage the household while raising a kid. So society has obviously neglected it.
When we talk about demolishing unfair stereotypes, especially those related to gender and sex, we need to accept that all humans are equal. There's no such thing as this is what a man does, this is what a woman does. Of course, there may be something that man can do better as he has more strength. We shouldn't ignore the fact that women are not weak in this case, and it's always necessary to groan about what you enjoy or do not enjoy doing. For instance, instead of saying things like, playing golf is not what I should play, that's what men do. You should say things like, personally, I don't like playing golf. That's enough. There is enough information in that kind of personal statement. You should always speak for yourself. You should make such a generalization.
Of course. The society is also fascinated by the idea of genetic influence in sex, and we use it as a pattern of discrimination.
And I think we need scientific facts and research which we can know how the world is working from, but we cannot fully depend on those facts since it has no moral lesson in it. By nature, men are stronger than women in general, so it might be more likely for a man to hurt or abuse a woman compared to the reverse. But it does not damage the fact that women can still inflict physical or mental abuse on men.
Yeah.
So therefore, why society condemns a male who is manipulative or abusive, they shouldn't overlook what is also happening to men as well.
Speaking of which, a few days ago I saw a post on Facebook where a woman wrote a comment which said, "I've bullied my boyfriend. One time I hit his head with a porcelain bowl and I got shocked when blood streamed down his face. And I told him not to go to the clinic in case I got into trouble."
What in the world?
Yeah, the thing is that the thing is gender equality is mostly perceived as protection of women from the danger of men, but I believe it is also necessary that the opposite should be acknowledged as well.
By the way, I don't know much about the cultural influences from the other countries, but in ours, there's many cultural experience and cultural influences on people who having friends of the opposite sex. Like especially in high schools, boys and girls couldn't talk to each other even if they were being honest to each other. And we were very limited by rules and regulation of school. If teachers find a boy and girl talking in the corridor, they call them to the office and warn them not to talk like that again.
Damn, I know that.
This is because I'm not sure, but we have a big stereotype that we girls should never be friends with boys in high school. Especially in high schools. We should only be friends with the same sex. If a girl is talking to a boy or being friends with a boy, she's labeled as being flirtatious. There is a stereotype that boys are also considered to be playing around when they are talking with girls. In my experience, most of my friends are boys. That's why when I was in school, my teachers always told me off. And if I felt like I was shaped in a cup, and that's not easy to deal with in such a time.
The culture here is really amazing. Like when I was very young, I was really influenced by the fact that the boys aren't allowed to talk to girls. If they do, they seem to be flirtation without a reason, like May had mentioned a second ago. So when I started using the social media, a group of extreme feminists had spread the idea that if boys were trying to make friends with a stranger girl, they were literal jerks. I was so afraid to talk to girls at that time because I couldn't get judged in that way, which I'm really not. But right now, I'm pretty much don't care about them. I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Okay, I'm just kidding. I just don't take it for granted because they try to brainwash me with the idea of toxic personality and stereotypes and stuff like that.
So when we dive more deeply into it, it gets creepier. A very biased and stupid, well-worn Burmese proverb would be "Pabo suja pabao, subo pajale pabao," which can be translated as if a spike drops onto a leaf, the leaf is damaged, and if a leaf drops onto a spike, also the leaf is damaged. Of course, like the context in which the proverb is used can vary, but it is often used in a situation where, for instance, like when there is a rape case, the victim is alienated by society and dismissed as somehow guilty of what had happened to him or her. Like, if the victim is a boy, people say things like, "He's a boy, why can't he defend himself in such a situation?" Or, if the victim is a girl, she might be ruthlessly criticized if she was wearing somewhat like revealing clothes or was hanging out with many guys. The thing is that all the criticism, hatred, and anger has to be directed towards the rapists, not the victims. But according to stereotypical and discriminative ideas that have been ingrained into people's mindset, our society's mindset. In case something happens to you, you have to protect yourself by not wearing revealing clothes and not dating with many guys. And if something bad happened to you, if you did so, it's you who would have to take responsibility.
When it comes to stereotypes, one of the most focused thing is the way you dress wherever you go or something else. I don't know about you and our audience, but for me, expensive clothes, valuable clothes, and clothing doesn't necessarily have to be expensive or branded. If I feel comfortable wearing it, it will be worth it to me to pay 1,000 or 10,000 or something. But it doesn't mean that I don't pay much attention to the clothes or the way I dress. And when it comes to stereotype about clothes, I do think you have experienced a lot as well. Here I have a question about the stereotype. If you're going to an expensive restaurant or well-designed shopping center or somewhere, do you think you need to dress well?
As for me, I don't think so.
But it's not being the same as always, right? Like, no matter how we dress, we should not be judged.
Yeah, it's like don't judge a book by its cover. Have you ever been thought of or looked at by staff? Like when you go to the mall near your house to buy groceries and you're not well dressed, the staff is looking at you, talking like you cannot afford those things, something like that.
I have often been looked at the way. I once to the mini mart near my house to buy chocolate and some snacks. When I go to the store, I asked the cashier, may I know where the chocolate is and where it is and something else. Then she looked at me intently and told me in surprise that the chocolate sold in their shop was that at 30,000 chess. So are you okay to buy, or do you want to have a look too? Then I knew that she thought that I couldn't afford to buy expensive things or something about 10,000 chess. But there was someone behind me to buy something, and he also looked like he had just returned from a party and he dressed well too. And the problem is that the step was very different from the way she answered my question when I asked. And she took him to each place he asked at once. I was amazed and wondered if I had to wear good clothes no matter what I bought. But honestly, I wasn't wearing sober on that day either. As far as I can remember, I was wearing a t-shirt and a short pant.
There are also like racial discrimination based on something that happened but didn't have anything to do with the particular person being discriminated. Like after 9/11 and the psyche of individual gets damaged by bad images of the group projected in society. Like images of the Muslims are like as aggressive, as less intelligent, and so on. And repeated exposure to these stereotypes cause these images to be internalized, implicitly accepted as true of the group, and tragically also perhaps of oneself. And this internalization damages the character by causing low self-esteem, low expectations, low motivation, and self-doubt, and the like. And in turn, this damages contribution to a host of bad things such as high unemployment, poor marriage success, low educational achievement, and criminality. And also it has a drastic impact from media portrayal of the Middle Easterners and as well as the Asians, like obviously after COVID.
Yeah, I can agree with that because racial discrimination is all over the world. We have very similar situations in this country, Yama,
course.
where people of different ethnic groups live. I think in this country, dominant or major tribes such as Burmese are often thought of as superior to other ethnic groups. This kind of sweeping generalization is quite unpleasant. I don't want to go political anymore, but it's quite
Yeah, of course.
as it's quite sensitive to talk about. Here, ethnic minorities are not still equally treated as major ones.
It's more like they're getting rejected by their own country.
Yeah, I'll say that. So as far as I'm concerned, when apply for a national registration card, there's a lot of red tape going on if the applicant is a non-Burmese. It's also true when it comes to religion. Awful stereotypes and double standards are ubiquitous throughout this whole country.
And I want to add one more stereotype that is formed based on age. Oftentimes, people attain perfection, such as young daughters and young teachers are considered incompetent in their fields compared to the older ones. Of course, it is true that the older people may be more experienced and have broader knowledge related to their professions. But I would say that we shouldn't deem younger generation incompetent in this case. Like for example, I had a biology teacher when I was in high school. She was also a doctor and age 26 and working for a clinic in her township. One day she told me that she didn't have many patients in her clinic, and I came to know that the reason was people thought she was too young to treat patients, and I felt terrible about that. When you are on your path to become a doctor in this country, perhaps you will only gain enough popularity or success only when you have had at least 2 degrees or by the time you're 40.
As I was saying, it's really hard for society to discard the stereotypes as they are passed on like tales. But I guess our generation doesn't care much about these ridiculous stereotypes anymore. Although overall trajectory is downward, I suppose the answer to the question, when will the stereotypes be eradicated, is like quote unquote, when older people finally kick the bucket. Right? So I'm just kidding. I think when the next generation pops up, they will consider what we think is normal as stereotypes as well. So it seems like the old stereotypes are disappearing, but as society have been constantly becoming open-minded, so modern stereotypes have come into our ways. It's all about psychology, but it's still important to fight against the stereotypes as because of them, and people have been mistreated, discriminated against, and abused. No one deserves a life that's full of unpleasant limits and regimentation set up by the society as a whole.
Thank you for listening to this podcast till the very end. We hope that you happen to think more about stereotypes in different aspects. If you have been discriminated against by any kind of stereotypes, don't forget to comment down below. We're curious to learn about your different experiences. Stay safe, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, have a great time. See you next week.